Welcome to today's episode of Learn It with Nicole. I'm your host, Nicole, and today we have a special guest for our discussion on the principles and teaching of language acquisition, which is part of my finals in English 4. For this, I reached out to Teacher Nguyen Pong Lan, or Teacher Lan, who kindly agreed to answer 10 of my questions on this topic. In her response, Teacher Lan shares her expertise on how languages are acquired and the key principles behind effective language teaching. I'll be playing her answers to each question, so let's get started and hear from Teacher Lan. So for my first question, what approach is that you think is effective for teaching vocabulary?
An effective way to teach vocabulary is by introducing it in meaningful context, like reading passages, listening activities, or real-life scenario. This helps students understand how words are used naturally. Visual flashcards and digital tools like Quizlet can also help students remember new words. Once they learn the words, encourage them to use them in speaking or writing tasks to reinforce their understanding.
For me, I completely agree with this idea that introducing vocabulary in meaningful context is an effective teaching strategy because when words are presented in real-life scenarios or relatable situations, it's easier for students to understand and retain them. So for my next question, how will you encourage a struggling student with speaking a second language to give their best to develop confidence in speaking?
To encourage a struggling student with speaking a second language to give their best to develop confidence in speaking, I have done some ways. The first thing is creating a safe and supportive environment where they feel comfortable making mistakes. I often tell my students that making mistakes is a natural part of learning and is encouraged as part of their progress. Second, I praise their effort, even small ones, to build their confidence. And this can be done by using some body language and phrases like saying good effort, or you are improving, you have done very well when students tried. In addition, I also pair them with a supportive classmate for activities and use role-playing or simple dialogues to help them practice. Furthermore, I also let them use some tools like Flipgrid to record themselves speaking in private before sharing with others. So there are many ways.
I really appreciate your approach to creating a supportive learning environment. Encouraging students to feel comfortable with mistakes is important, as it takes the pressure off and helps them to see mistakes as part of the learning process rather than something to fear. For the question number 3, what is your best advice for some students who are having trouble with language retention?
My advice for some students who are having trouble with language retentions. Yes, regular review and repetitions are key. I often encourage students to keep a personal vocabulary notebook use apps like Anki or Quizlet for spaced repetition. They can also use some fun activities like interactive quizzes or games. Furthermore, applying the language in everyday situations like journaling or chatting with friends makes it easier to remember. Finally, using visuals or audio can also make lessons stick.
I really like how teacher Lan emphasized the importance of regular review and repetition. It's a proven method for reinforcing what we've learned, and the ideas of using apps like Quizlet is naturally good because it combines technology with language learning, making it easier and more engaging for students. Plus, incorporating language practice into daily activities helps students apply what they've learned in real life situations. For my fourth question, how will you motivate students to unconsciously practice learning a second language on a daily basis?
To motivate students to unconsciously practice learning a second language on a daily basis. About this, I often recommend some simple changes like watching movies or listening to music in the target language. For example, in the latest classroom connections, we have practiced singing the song Merry Christmas with each other. Another ways I have done is ask them to create a story of their own by using written code, and then they will post their stories on the Padlet. And another idea is to assign engaging tasks like recording their daily activities in English using Flipgrid, and these little habits add up over time.
I love the idea of incorporating simple activities like watching movies and listening to music in foreign language as part of learning process because it makes learning feel more natural and enjoyable. Now for the fifth question. What do you think are the best ways to teach pronunciation?
About the best ways to teach pronunciation. First, start with listening and imitation. Teacher can use some podcast or video to expose students to natural pronunciation. Next, I often break tricky sound into smaller parts and practice them through simple drills. To make this activity easier, I have used some apps like Reading Progress or Reading Code. These apps are very helpful for students to self-study at home. And in class, I have applied some activities like tongue twisters and songs are fun ways to teach intonations and stress. Finally, I encourage students to record their own voices and listen back for self-assessment.
Thank you for your insight response, Teacher Lan. I really appreciate how you emphasize the importance of listening and imitation as a starting point in language learning. It makes a lot of sense to familiarize students with the sounds of words by encouraging them to listen to podcasts, which is a great way to immerse them in authentic language use. I also love how you incorporate fun activities like tongue twisters and songs to teach intonation. It shows that learning doesn't have to be boring, and engaging students in this way makes it easier for them to remember and apply. Next question is, what challenges did you encounter in teaching English as a second language?
About the challenges I have encountered in my teaching career, of course, I have experienced a lot of challenges, including students' fears of making mistakes, different levels of language skills in the same class, and limited English exposure outside school. To tackle these, I use a mix of patient, creative activities and differentiated teaching methods. Things like gamified learning and teamwork activities seem engage students. Finally, getting parents involved and providing extra resources also make a big difference.
I completely agree that the fear of making mistakes is a common challenge for many students in language classes. It's great to hear how you use a combination of patience and creative activities to help students feel more comfortable. Involving parents is such a smart approach, especially when it comes to overcoming limited English exposure outside of school. And recognizing the different levels of language skills among students shows a deep understanding of how to meet each other's unique needs. Your approach definitely highlights the importance of creating a supportive and engaging learning environment. For the seventh question, how will you incorporate fun activities into teaching a new language to the students?
About incorporating fun activities into teaching a new language to students, I think games like word bingo, Pictionary, or vocabulary charades can make learning fun. Role playing and grammar activities let students practice real life conversations, and technology tools like Kahoot, Bamboozle, or Flipgrid also make lesson interactive and enjoyable. And another way is by using storytelling sessions or group projects really add variety while help students bond and learn together.
That's a great point. I completely agree. Role playing and grammar activities really make learning more engaging. It's like bringing language to life. Plus, practicing real life conversation helps build confidence in a way that textbook just can't. The next question is, how do you deal with student who is afraid to make mistakes in speaking a second language?
To deal with a student who is afraid to make mistakes in speaking a second language, I remind them that making mistakes is completely normal and part of learning. Sharing my own experiences of learning a language helps too. I encourage small group discussions where pressure is lower. Starting with simple tasks.
I agree with your perspective. Creating a supportive and non-judgmental environment is essential for effective learning. When individuals feel safe to make mistakes, they are more likely to engage and participate fully. The focus on small groups discussion is particularly valuable as it lowers the pressure and also helps to create a more comfortable space to start with a manageable task. And sharing personal experiences also helps, as it shows others that growth often comes through challenges. For the ninth question, what are effective tips that you can give to students to expand their vocabulary and retain what they learn?
About tips that I have given to my students that helps them expand their vocabulary and retain what they learned. I often advise my students to read a wide variety of materials like books, blogs, stories, and even articles in the language. I ask them to use context clues to guess word meanings. Besides keeping a vocabulary journals and review it often is really helpful. I also recommend some tools like word maps or mnemonics help link new words to familiar ones. Most importantly, use words in conversations.
I see your point. It's clear that using variety of materials along with context clues and vocabulary journals can really help students expand their language skills. Incorporating words into conversation definitely seems like a practical way to make a learning stick. For the last question, in your opinion, what is more important in language learning? Grammar accuracy or communication fluency?
About the importance of grammar accuracies and communication fluencies in learning language. In my opinion, both of them are equally important. But I think fluencies should come first. It's more important to convey your message and build confidence in communications early on. Once students feel comfortable, grammar accuracies can be refined over time. Balancing the two ensures they can communicate effectively while improving their language skills.
I totally get that perspective. Fluency does build confidence and helps students express themselves without overthinking every little detail. I mean, when you're able to just speak naturally, it kind of breaks down the barrier of hesitation, right? But at the same time, feel like accuracy kind of sneaks in along the way. Like, the more you speak and practice, the more you start noticing little grammar mistakes and refining them over time. It's almost like fluency lays the foundation and then the grammar steps in to polish things up. But I think it also depends on the situation. Like if you're writing an academic paper, grammar might need to take the lead, whereas is casual conversations. Like uh, fluency takes the spotlight. So yeah, I'd say fluency, but grammar shouldn't be too far behind. It's kind of like balance of the. And that wraps up today's episode. A big thank you to Teacher Lan for sharing those valuable insights with us, from emphasizing the importance of fluency in communication to reshaping how we view grammar. There's so much to take away. I truly believe that language is all about connection, and what Teacher Lan mentioned about focusing on fluency first really stuck on a chord with me. It's all about building confidence and comfort in communication, and everything else will follow. And once again, I'm your host, Nicole, and this is the end. Bye.